We are live on Facebook. Hey, everybody. So, tonight I am celebrating a big milestone in my life. At this point in my journey, it is the release of a book that I wrote with Jim Putman called The Revolutionary Disciple, Walking Humbly with Jesus in Every Area of Life. So give us a shout out if you are watching, here with my lovely wife, Rachel. And we're just doing a little Facebook Live. Let me know if you can hear us all right. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I wanted to know how it's coming across. So essentially, Rachel and I are just going to talk about the journey of the book, because it has definitely been a partnership, a labor of love for our whole family, I feel like. Yeah. And it took me 3 years to write this book. What's the joke that you've been making about it?
So this book is like Chad's baby, right? And in the last 3 years that he was writing his book baby, I actually birthed our 3 babies.
3 actual human babies, 1 book baby.
That's right.
So, yeah, that happened. But there was a pandemic. There is a pandemic, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, it's not over, right?
Yeah. Give us a shout out if you are watching, listening. Just let us know you're here. Yeah, so congratulations, by the way, on delivering 3 babies in like 3 years. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, in case there's any confusion, Emma is 3 years old, and we had Catherine last year, and she was stillborn, and we just had Joshua. So, Joshua is 6 weeks old. Yeah. But anyway, back to the book. I wanted to celebrate this with everybody. So this is kind of a practice, though, with the whole Facebook Live. It's also on YouTube. We're just getting used to it. But send us your questions. What questions do you have about this book right here? What do you have? What questions do you have about me, my career, my choice of background, my choice of, well, I didn't have a choice with the baldness. Anyway, let's get to it. Shoot your questions over. Rachel, do you have any questions to start off?
I do. 3 years. That's a long time to be writing a book. For me, I've never written a book.
You did, though. You wrote your dissertation.
Well, I'm not sure that counts. You wrote a book that people are actually going to read.
Okay.
So,
at least, we have 200 people who have signed up to read it.
Yes,
so.
People are going to read your book. So you clearly really believe in the message, the main message that this book is sending out there, right?
I think so.
So what would you say is the main message of your book? What are you trying to communicate to people if you had to break it down?
Let me break it down. So pride destroys discipleship. So as a follower of Jesus, I'm on the journey of discipleship like everybody else. And the truth is, I really struggled with pride for a lot of my life. In fact, I've been called out for pride many times. So it's kind of like, what business do I have writing about it? But it's kind of like it takes one to know one. A lot of people who are in recovery are able to help others well because they've been there. And I think that we can all struggle with pride, but I've just seen how it destroys people's lives. It threatened to take mine, metaphorically, obviously. Tough time in my life where I was really just kind of butting heads with a lot of people that were important to me. And I was confronted by my pride, and I'm still processing, overcoming this weakness in my life. But I kind of had a wake-up call on a Thanksgiving morning. Had a conversation with my dad where he essentially confronted me about this issue in my life, and it was a really difficult conversation, but there was a lot of truth spoken to me And it was like a wake-up call. And I realized, like, man, I've got a problem. And so I discovered over, I'd say the last 5 to 7 years, something about the humility of Jesus. So pride wrecks people's lives, distances them from God. I think it can wreck marriages. It can tear apart churches. People can lose their job over it, you know. And then I think it isolates us from other people would be one of the main things that it does is just, you know, pride isolates because it's focused on self. So the main message of the book is that we have a problem with pride. Jesus offers the path of humility, and he invites us into that. He says in Matthew chapter 11, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Come, learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart." And so I think that is really helpful, a helpful paradigm for thinking through. I'm just checking the feed here. It looks like there's a little lag, but anyway, let us know if you can see it, hear it, feel it. We got one thumbs up. Let's check here. I'm just going to kind of look on Facebook myself, but yeah, I mean, I think that's really the message at the end of the day about the issue is Jesus offers us an alternative to the path of destruction. Because, you know, if you think about it, it's like we're all, apart from God, prideful people. We're focused. So the way we define it in the book is, and if you're kind of just logging on, we're talking about the revolutionary disciple. This is our launch party. Still feels like pandemic times. Also, no one goes to bookstores anymore. So we're doing a virtual launch party set up in the house. But what was I saying? Oh, yeah, and you could buy the book. Go to hymnpublications.com/revolutionary. It'll take you there. But yeah. So
overcoming pride. So
I've overcome pride.
Are
100%.
on the journey.
Yeah, definitely on the journey of recovery. Like we all are, I think. But I think one of the cool insights that just as I was writing this book with Jim that I found was that Jesus offers us a definitive and measurable way to pursue humility. I think when I was a kid, so I've been thinking about pride ever since I read C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity, and it talks about, C.S. Lewis talks about the great sin is the name of the chapter. And it just terrified me as a 10th grader at Franklin High School. This insidious killer was lurking behind all the other sins. And I was pretty disciplined as a kid, so I didn't have a lot of obvious sin in my life at that point, like to a lot of people. And I tried really hard to be a good person. But I realized like my heart had a major problem.
Yeah.
That, you know, I could get everything right, but I was still, here, let's type a comment and see if this works. All right, let's see. Anyone out there? Give us a shout. Let's see. All right. Let's do a little chat. We can call this Chatting with Chad. So, there we go. Okay, I got one comment from Jay Austin. It said, "It's lagging a bit, but it's good."
Thank you.
So we'll have to change that frame rate. How do I do that live? But it's good. Okay, we'll just trust that it's somewhat good.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
So I think where you were going with your story, you were saying as a kid, pride maybe seemed
back to the
abstract
story.
and like an abstract thing to overcome.
Yeah, and I just felt so daunted by this, like, it's the great sin, and like, it's the worst one, and yet I literally became terrified of becoming like ultimately proud. Like I knew I struggled with pride, and I was like, oh no, like it could just be hidden there my whole life, and then all of a sudden, rawr, it just destroys me. And so it's this like lurking monster, a skeleton in the closet for me, where I was like, oh no, what am I going to do about this? And so I'd say over the last 5 to 7 years, as I really, especially in the last 5 years, I've really discovered basically like things we can do to overcome pride. In other words, actions. And so it's not just, the main thing is we gotta realize that it's not like you gotta think about yourself in a certain way. So the way we define pride in the book is humility is a humble disciple knows who they are before God, chooses to go lower by serving, submitting, listening, and confessing. And that's been super clarifying for me to think through that and to quantify it like that, because now it's not so abstract.
Yeah.
So I think you've seen me even grow in this since we've been married the last 5 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Where it's like, oh man. So in other words, the first thing you need to do is know who you are before God. You don't have to like deny who you are. You don't have to pretend like you're nothing. You don't have to act like let's say, you don't have to act like you don't know yourself. When someone says like, oh, you did such a great job. What if you believe you did a great job and you're like, no, I didn't do very good. It's like, it's all about where the attention goes. And so it's not so much that you should downplay yourself. It's more that you should upplay God. So it's knowing who you are before God and then choosing to go lower. So I think about Jesus, obviously the highest position in the universe with the Father. So he didn't consider the, fullness of God, the deity which dwelt in him in bodily form. He didn't consider, the likeness of God something to hold on to, but he became a servant. So Philippians 2. He made that choice to go lower. He knew exactly who he was, and then he chose to go lower. And then as you look at this was just huge for me, the next part. If you think about the heart level, which we just talked about, so in other words, it's an inward knowledge of who you are. It's that transformation that God does in our hearts where we choose to go lower. And that only happens by Jesus Christ. And then when we make that choice, it's action-based. And that's been the most liberating thing for me. In other words, humility is not primarily a feeling about yourself. It starts with the heart level change, but it always goes to action. So there's those 4 things. And it's the positive and negative side of both words and action. So we listen, so we receive words, and then we confess, we give words. And then we serve by giving people our life in a sense. Yeah. And then we submit, so we receive someone's authority. And so with both sides of our words and actions, we are humble and we submit, confess, listen, and serve. And that took the mystery out of it for me.
So there's something that you can actually do to act humbly out of being humble. That's what those things are.
Right. Yeah, and it goes back to the heart of Jesus. Jesus says, come and learn from me. And I always find it funny when we, can everyone hear us okay? Is it lagging still? I'm always a little bit discouraged when people, what was I saying? I'm always discouraged when people act like they can't do anything about it. It's like, I just need to think harder. Yeah. And Jesus tells us to do something. He says, come learn from me. And with the Great Commission, with kind of any of the obedience commands, it's like, I always think of, well, if God was just this mean curmudgeon, he would tell us to do stuff and then we couldn't do it. And then it'd be like, gotcha. And I think a lot of people take a lot of commands to be that way. So here, do you want to turn that light toward you? I think your face is going dark. on the side, you can turn it up where it's a little brighter. I want everyone to be able to see my better half. But anyway, God tells us to do, to obey. Oh, man. Okay. He tells us to obey because he knows that by his power we can. And I think that that's a missing piece. It's kind of like, he says, come and learn from me. I think we can actually learn humility. Now, yeah.
And maybe when we don't feel like we're humble, we can act humbly.
Yeah. Humility is not primarily a feeling. I think that's a paradigm shift for a lot of people.
Because there's a lot of times we might not feel like obeying in any given way. So.
And we might not feel particularly in the mood to serve or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful.
So there's a story that goes with that, and we include this in the book. And by the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the revolutionary disciple who's Jesus. And as we follow him, we can learn to be humble like Jesus. And that's truly revolutionary. I'm going to tell you a story in a minute.
Okay.
But I wanted to say something about humility in general. So Dallas Willard is a big, I'm seeing if I have the book. Dallas Willard is like one of my heroes. And he's written a lot about character. And one of the things that I've really admired about his messages, it comes through in his book called The Allure of Gentleness. So the premise is that Jesus was winsome towards people because he was humble and gentle, not in spite of his gentleness. I think a lot of people, so a lot of people are talking about revolution right now. Like, I mean, our country's not doing great, truth be told. And people are upset. It's like, some people want to actually physically fight. I've heard it on the right and the left. Like, our culture is kind of like, what's happening? And so as Jim and I got close to finishing the book, we actually changed the title like 100 times. And we landed on the revolutionary. We'll talk about that too. We landed on the revolutionary disciple because of the current cultural climate. And it connects with what I was saying about Dallas Willard, because essentially Dallas Willard says that we can be humble, and that's radical. In other words, it's counterintuitive to use a posture of gentleness as a way to win people over. You feel like you should like fight and like conquer in order to have a revolution. But instead, Jesus says, no, be the servant, be the least. And so, in other words, his humility is what's revolutionary about Jesus. I mean, he died on a cross, right? Next to other, well, they were called insurrectionists at the time. A lot of people say it was the thief on the cross. Thief is too light of a word. He was, some people use the word brigand. They were violent robbers, is what the word for the person who was on both sides of, the people who were on both sides of Jesus on the cross. They were violent murderers, sometimes called revolutionaries. And that's who Jesus died next to. But it's like he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
So here's the story. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we said that humility is not a feeling. By the way, give us a shout out. I think we've got one comment here. Holler at your boy. No, we're testing this out, trying this out, but also celebrating my book, The Revolutionary Disciple, right now. So there's this huge thing. I think we misperceive. Is that a word? Humility.
I don't know.
We misperceive the nature of humility. Don't tell the others. We think humility is a feeling. So I was in college one day when I realized, like, in a really kind of dramatic way, that humility is primarily a choice that stems from the heart. So walked into class at Ozark Christian College. Mark Moore is teaching Life of Christ section 4. So 4 semesters of the life of Christ. We're in the last week of Jesus' life. And it's the day where Mark Moore was teaching about Jesus washing the disciples' feet in John 13. So we walk into class and all the desks are gone. And we're like, well, what do we do? And it was kind of like stair-step seating. So each kind of row of desks, was on a step all the way up. And so we just kind of sat on the floor. He came in with a towel and a basin. And he said, today's going to be different. I'm going to choose 12 of you. And there was about 50 people in the class. I'm going to wash your feet. And we're like, what? Never happened before, never happened since. So anyway, he proceeded to wash 12 people's feet. And we all just kind of stood there, sat there, and we're like, man. But what was incredible is that he spoke to each person as he washed their feet, and he identified them with one of the 12 disciples or apostles. And so, it's like Philip and, Judas number 1. And then he even called someone Judas, like Iscariot. And he's like, you're not like Judas now, but if you're not careful, you could become like. And it was like, I'm glad he didn't choose me.
Did
but
you do that person last?
That was last.
Yeah.
That was last.
Well,
yeah.
It's a tough way to end it. Yeah.
The whole time I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to pick me, pride. And so he finishes, and I think he might have taught after that. It was whatever. And so we're all kind of packing up to leave, and it was like he was leaving out the door, and then he stops, he turns around, and he says, I care much more about how someone acts with regard to humility than how they feel about themselves. And he said, and if you're upset that I didn't pick you, then you missed the point. That it was pride driving you. And it's not about you. And it was like, man, that really made an impact on me, where I realized it's not about how I feel, it's about how I act at the end of the day. In other words, you can feel all sorts of whatever about yourself. You could feel humble. You could even denigrate your own identity or perception of yourself. But if you don't act with humility, then it's not Christ-like humility. It's the world's brand of humility, but it's not Christ-like humility. And so, anyway, that was impactful. And we put that in the book. If you're just jumping online, we're talking about the revolutionary disciple. Grab your copy now. No, just wanted to celebrate this with friends on Facebook. Apparently I'm lagging still. I wish I could fix that. How do I do that? Let me see if I could fix it real quick. You want to talk about something?
Sure. Well, I have read a couple different versions of this book. I am not an editor or even much of a reader, but I personally have enjoyed reading it and benefited from just the practical things that you and Jim say and the stories that are relatable.
You like that?
Yeah. And just that you guys really draw from the life of Christ. Like what is humility?
Yeah.
He is the revolutionary disciple, like you said. And that we can be revolutionary disciples of him as well. Especially in our culture today. What does that, look like? And I think you guys answer that question well.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, because you do, let's see, here's the book. You do have a co-author on the book. You and Jim wrote this book together. So tell us a little bit about him and how you guys came to collaborate on this project, and I don't know, maybe just a little bit about how you connected about this topic.
Good question. So I first met Jim when I was like 18 years old, somewhere in that range, late teens. And it was this guy my dad had met. We were picking him up from the airport to take him to this event at Franklin Christian Church in Franklin, Tennessee. and he was there with his associate minister. And I said, he was speaking at this event with, maybe 100 or so pastors. And I said, hey, Jim, are you excited to speak tonight? And he said, no, not really. It's like, oh, yeah. I was like, well, didn't know what to say. How come? And he said, I don't like to tell people that they're wrong. I was like, boosh, all right. Which is a funny first kind of encounter story with my co-author on a book about humility. Don't want to tell them they're wrong. But the truth is I really think God's worked in his life to give a clear message to the church that's from Scripture that says we need relationships. Mm-hmm. And that's his biggest critique of the way that pastors have functioned and that churches have functioned. I would say it's his life message is relational discipleship, in contrast with a purely informational style. So I ended up getting to know Jim over the years because my dad's pretty well connected. My dad's Bobby Harrington, pretty well connected with him, and ended up actually getting a phone call from him when I was like, let's see, I must have been 24. I just graduated college and finished a year of seminary, and I was burned out on study. I just basically, finished 6 years of theological academic study, and I was like, okay, I need a break. So I basically dropped out of seminary at the time to take a break, and right around that time I got a phone call from Jim, and he invited me to come up to his church and do a youth ministry internship in Idaho. I want to make sure there's enough light on you. You're like in the shadows. I'm going to pause that story. I'm going to change the battery out so you guys can see my better half here. So,
needs a new battery.
You want to give him a...
So, what else? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Wow, that's very bright.
Is it too bright?
No, it's okay. Just if you look right at it.
Okay. And we're back. Okay, so I was saying
Ministry internship.
Jim gave me a call, and I was like, that actually sounds fun. So I got in my car. I drove up to, not that moment. Not too long after that, though, I got in my car. I drove all the way to Idaho and broke down on the way. And I spent 3 months there, and it was so refreshing to get to know their church and their leaders and see what relational discipleship really looked like. And their church was about 6,000 people at the time, so it was quite the experience. They'd been around, I think, for 10 or 12 years. And so we got to know each other. I mean, he and his family invited me to their family birthdays during that time. I mean, he treated me like family. It was, talk about relational discipleship. I was like, oh, man.
He lived it.
Yeah. And so, and then fast forward to about 3 years ago, my dad called me. And he asked me to help Jim write a book on this message that was in his heart about humility. So I talked to Jim, and Jim said, there's only one thing that I want to write about right now, and it's the pride I see in people's lives. And little did I know, but he had a story about pride, which is in the introduction of the book, where he shares about his battle with pride that almost caused him to leave the church. He was not synced up with his elders, and he wanted to kind of do it his own way, but saw a brighter side. And what he's learned over the years, not just then, but it was like a fresh way of learning about humility and the life that can bring. He was restored to the elders at his church. I'll let you read the full story in the book. And if you're just joining us, we're talking about the revolutionary disciple. It's talking about the humility of Jesus and how we can learn that together. So what I was saying was, he called me. I went to the internship. It was amazing. And then my dad called me. That's where we were. Okay. And he said, can you help Jim get this book done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, what's it about? And then, Jim and I are talking about it. And I was like, man. So I flew up to Idaho. We spent 2 days writing the book together.
Mm-hmm.
And then, no, we did not spend 2 days. I spent 2 days recording him talk. And I had about 10 hours of audio after that, that went through the outline of the book. And then I probably spent 4 or 5 months taking that in 2018 and creating what the first iteration of the book was, which is The Death of Discipleship. And then we changed the title 100 times and landed on The Revolutionary Disciple. I think we came up with at least 100 titles. I think we came up with 100.
I remember hearing about.
How do you feel about where we landed?
Oh, it's the perfect title.
The Death of Discipleship is not very positive. It gets to the heart of it.
A little negative, though.
Yeah, a little negative.
Yeah, there were a lot of options, a lot of title options.
Yeah. I was just seeing if anyone's watching this.
Is anyone watching?
There's 3 people watching it, which is okay.
Cool.
Talk about humility. I know.
It's 3 people.
But I keep asking them to say something, but
yeah, they might be shy.
Well, yeah, or maybe we're lagging too much. I think it's
know.
a setting on my computer.
Okay.
So lesson learned for next time. You can't fix it while you're in the middle of it.
Oh, I see. It looks like that.
Yeah, but that's all right. 3 people care a lot. Do you guys care? Is that frozen too? Anyway, so, at one point Jim said, so do you still want to finish the book? Like I said, we went through a lot. The pandemic hit. So I finished the first draft. We actually released what we now call the primer of the book. It was just a little, I don't know, maybe 60-page booklet that was the core of our message. And it was called, The Death of Discipleship. So rethought that, reconfigured all that, and then we ended up coming out of the pandemic, and we saw really the cultural chaos that's been ensuing over the last year, a little more than a year now. And a lot of people are talking about revolution. They're talking about, the clashing of cultures. And so I think we need to talk about that as Christians. And Jesus leads us in the way to the only lasting revolution. You can have a revolution or anything like that, but what is going to last? That's the big question.
Yeah.
So the way of humility is really the only way to make true change. So we were reading, I was reading this book called Humilitas. And the author is a historian, and he talks about the history of humility. And he is a Christian, but he's primarily a historian. Like, as far as his academics, he's not a pastor.
Yeah.
He's a historian. And so he and a team of people did research on the history of humility, and they found out that until the time of Christ, humility was seen as something, it was basically defined as you can kind of lower yourself. Let's see, how was it? Before someone who's greater than you, you can be humble. But if there's someone who's like a lower position than you, then you would never lower yourself as far as humility goes. You can lower yourself before someone greater than you, but not the other way. And it literally changed in Western culture, and you can trace it back to Paul's letter to the Philippians.
Wow.
So if you just do a linguistic study of humility in Latin and Greek and Hebrew, that's what they did. You'll find that the earliest we find humility being redefined as lowering yourself, you being in the high position and lowering yourself, that is nowhere in literature until Philippians chapter 2, which says that Jesus did not consider deity to be something to hold on, his deity to be something to hold on to, but he lowered himself and became like a servant.
Wow.
So that happened.
Yeah.
And ever since then, the crazy thing, it wasn't just like that. And then it just, whoosh. Now that's actually the primary way that we see humility
Right.
as a culture. Jesus literally created a humility revolution. And I think that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So
Very cool. Well, I wanted to ask about the resources, because as your banner says here, grow as a person, equip your group, inspire the world, resources, right? So you know, obviously do that by publishing books as resources, but even in your specific book, right?
Yes.
The Revolutionary Disciple,
That's it.
you
right
have resources throughout the book that people can access, and I'm really excited about that.
Really?
Personally.
Are you gonna go through?
Yeah, I mean, I've already been through some of them.
That's true.
It just really, to me, it kind of brings the book to life.
Yeah.
Where you don't just read the book, there's something for you to do. But it's not a Bible study, it's not a workbook, it's, you know.
It's somewhere in between.
Yeah. So I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that, if you wanted to explain it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good question. So at I think it's like 5 or 6 different points in the book, we basically say, hey, if you are connecting with the content of this section of the book, you can go to the revolutionarydisciple.com/tools and download resources. And so those resources help you go deeper. So let me grab something real quick to show you what I'm talking about. Or it's a parallel. So I have this weird habit of, or at least in 2021, writing books by accident. So that happened again.
Yeah.
And I told you that. Basically, I realized that over the last 2 days. Because the book launches tomorrow, and you know, we want to make sure to have those tools ready. So my team's been editing and designing those like crazy. So ended up being a little book.
Yeah.
A little booklet. I think it's about 20,000 words. Let's see. Yeah, somewhere around. Yeah, 15, probably 15 to 20,000 words.
Yeah, sometimes you start putting ideas on paper and you're like, might as well be a book.
So it might be a workbook, but either way, you can download it for free. So when you read the book, you'll get what I'm saying. But essentially, for each sphere, so the premise of the book is that there's 5 spheres of discipleship. And so there's the abiding in Christ sphere, there's the home sphere, there's the church sphere, the home sphere, the world sphere, and then the spiritual realm. And so we have like ways to kind of work through some of the issues. We have worksheets and studies that supplement the book. And then we also have a whole sermon series. We have sermon outlines for pastors, branded slides to do a church-wide campaign, a 6-week study as a church through the book of Ephesians using the Revolutionary Disciple book. We also have videos that are like 10-minute little videos you can watch for those 6 weeks. I mean, this is going to be incredible. Come on, people. Do it. We really want to get our message out there because God has really changed us through it, and we want that life change for you too. So, you know, I'll just do a quick shout out. Get the book at therevolutionarydisciple.com. You can also go to hymnpublications.com. Where's the link? Right there. That's the website right there. Yeah, we'd love to help you go deeper individually and as a church. And so we've just created like a suite of resources. It's pretty sweet.
It is.
It might become a physical workbook you can order, but it's definitely a PDF you can download and print off.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do all of them. You can kind of, because there's like, I think there's 10 of them. So yeah. The first one is, I think it's the first one. It's called Identifying Pride, it's like identifying pride in the 5 spheres. So it's pretty exciting stuff. It starts out with the bad news, and then it gets a lot better as you go on.
Yeah.
So it's good news in the end. And there's a resource there, too, that I'm excited about that I finished up today, and it's called Crafting Your Family Rule of Life. So this was the other book I accidentally wrote this year. I was teaching a class last fall in 2020 on spiritual formation, and so I put all the worksheets together in a book called Your Spiritual Formation Plan. But it's really just all the worksheets that go with the class, which is a course that is available at hemppublications.com as well. Mm-hmm. But anyway, long story short, I accidentally wrote 2 books this year. I on purpose wrote 1 book this year. Maybe I was making up. It took me 3 years to write.
Oh my gosh!
This.
Right.
And so I did 2 more books this year.
I had 3 babies. You had 3 babies. How
3 babies. And if you didn't hear it earlier, Rachel gave birth to 3 babies in the time that it took from I started writing the book. Rachel had 3 babies, and then I finished the book. Yeah. Literally. But no, I think we each had 3 babies.
See,
mine were book babies.
2 of your babies were accidental.
Mm-hmm. Were your babies accidental?
No.
We should talk to your husband about that. Oh, okay. So, all right. Well, on that note, no.
Back on track.
I'm really excited about getting this book out. Launch date is tomorrow, September 22nd, 2021. By the time you watch this, if you're not watching live, it'll be available. Truth be told, it was available on Amazon for like 2 weeks. But
has anyone ordered it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, people are ordering the book.
How are the people finding it?
Jim was on Todd Herman's radio show.
Oh.
We've been doing marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
This is marketing. Oh, man. Well, if anyone I really want to talk to you guys. It's supposed to be social media. You know what I'm saying? A little social, a little media.
Can they hear us?
I think you can hear us.
But they maybe can't see us very well.
Yeah, I think they're, it's something I learned about the frame rate. I must have hit a button. So anyway, I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions? I was hoping we'd get some questions from the people watching. Yeah, some questions.
The people are watching.
There are 4 people watching right now.
No, there's 4 people.
There's 4 unique individuals
who could have questions.
Who could ask any question, like, why'd you lose your hair? Why is there an H on the sign behind us? What's the rest of the URS's word behind your head? Just any sorts of questions. So, that kind of covers it. I really want you guys. Oh, there's an audiobook version available.
Yes, that's exciting.
It's very exciting
for all the people driving in the car a lot.
A lot of people drive a lot
and listen to podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of podcasts. But you could also do an audiobook instead of a podcast.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this is Facebook Live. This is YouTube Live. This is the book launch party that no one came to. The Revolutionary Disciple.
There's 4 people watching.
It's 2 now.
Oh.
That's
There's
okay,
2
though.
people watching.
Yeah.
They're here.
You're here. The people are here.
There are 2 people.
They're silent, though. Okay. I was going to do a book signing, but I realized that I don't think anyone wants that. So we're just going to talk about it. I would say over the last 10 years, this is one of the primary messages that I've learned about. It was really cool that Jim and I got connected. Yeah. And I love the fact that my dad asked us to write it. So my dad runs Discipleship.org, is one of the 3 nonprofits he runs. Oh, we got a question. We're going to answer that question, Jay. Let me finish this thought. Sweet! Jay Austin coming through. but it was cool that I was asked to write this. I feel like that was a gift from God, not just the opportunity, but as the CEO of Discipleship.org, my dad came to me in gym and said, "Hey, would you do the theme book for this year?" Which was 2018.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. That it's the theme book, right?
Yeah,
for
so
the conference this year.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we wrote it, and then we completely rewrote it, expanded it for 2021. So it's actually the theme book at the National Disciple Making Forum this year.
Month,
so November 4th and 5th in Nashville. We're going to give away 1,000 copies.
Wow.
I don't know if they've promoted that idea, but we're going to,
1,000 copies.
Yeah, they're going to give away 1,000 copies. I mean, we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's kind of cool that I was asked to do this project because I feel like it was like something requested of me. So when Teresa of Avila wrote Interior Castle in her intro, and this is like literally a 12th century nun and mystic Christian writer, she said that she was asked to write that book. And it really is a lot about humility. That book is too. Anyway, I felt like the Lord said, hey, this isn't about you. And part of it not being about you is to not think about how it's a little awkward to write a book about humility. It's actually humbling to do. To be like, I don't really like this is uncomfortable. And so I felt like the Lord encouraged that. All right. Jay Austin said, how can this book be beneficial for fathers modeling discipleship for their kids? Let me take a drink and think about that. You got a thought?
Man.
I'm back.
All right.
The frame rate thing, that's disappointing. Sorry that it's lagging. Jay, you're the children's minister at our church. I'd really love to know your thoughts on that. But let me answer let me answer your question, because I am speaking at D6 on this very topic of parents being humble.
What is D6?
D6 conference. D6 stands for Deuteronomy chapter 6, in which God says, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, which translates, just kidding, that was a joke, but that's actually what it says. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And he says, impress the commands that I give you today upon your children. And then he describes. So that's D6 conference is about family discipleship. And so this is a great question, Jay. Let me answer it. So in sphere 3, the church sphere, the home sphere, we basically make an argument that parents are called to be humble. And I think it's interesting. And so we use Ephesians as a framework for walking through the 5 spheres. So by the time we get to Ephesians chapter 5 and 6, we see husbands and wives submitting to one another through service and respect. And then we get to Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 4, where Paul says, he tells fathers to not exasperate your children. It's interesting to me that he does not say mothers. He says husbands and wives in chapter 5. So I think your question is really interesting, Jay, that you said fathers in particular. I am a newbie father. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-week-old. Is he 7 weeks now?
Yeah, today.
7 whole weeks old. He got COVID at 10 days old. Made it through that. We all made it through that. I don't know how, by the grace of God. But so going back to Ephesians 6, where Paul says, do not exasperate your children. I've thought a lot about that. So exasperation means to cause your children to become unnecessarily angry. That's what exasperation means. And he says it to fathers. And so if you think about it, especially in that society where, fathers were kind of more the traditional role more often, I think that fathers could more easily exasperate their children. Women by nature, in my experience, are much more gentle. Point in case right here, Rachel is much more gentle than I naturally. So I think fathers have the tendency really to kind of lord their authority over their children more easily because, physically, or maybe they provide for the family more, or just our disposition is more kind of domineering. And so Paul's like, all right, dads, let's talk. So in our book, we talk about what it means to be a leader. And so we go back to our definition of a humble disciple, which is someone who knows who they are before God and chooses to go lower by serving, submitting, listening, and confessing. How many fathers do that? And so we work out what that looks like in the home, to serve your spouse and your kids, to submit in a godly way through that service, to listen to my wife's rebuke, and and we're growing together as a couple in that, where I need more rebuke. I do, but having the ears to hear that can be hard. And then confessing wrong, I think those are really hard things to do. And I think the father has a unique role to lead with humility. It's really exciting when a father is humble. I think it's incredible when anyone's humble, but there's something really powerful about someone who's naturally more bent to domineering, taking that step down. And I believe that fathers are the leaders of the family, called by God to be that. And the primary thing that means is being humble. And that is a journey I am on. Man, that's hard. I mess up more than I care to admit publicly. But
you're doing a good job.
Thank you. But in some ways it's simple and it's measurable. Like, literally, how many times have you confessed your wrongdoing to your family? I guess I'm saying that to you, but all of us. Like, how easy is it for you to confess when you mess up? I think it should be second nature for us as fathers. My dad modeled that for me. And so we tell stories about, there's a great story about Darren at Jim's church, whose daughter wanted to get a tattoo, and just how Darren got counsel and he listened humbly to advice. He talked to his wife about it. He was patient, and he led his family well. I'll let you read the book to find out what ended up happening with his daughter, who wanted a tattoo of a Bible verse, but how he handled that, even though as a father he didn't want his daughter to get that. Anyway, what else am I saying? Oh, so Jay, does that answer your question, brother? How can this book be beneficial? So yeah, we just tell stories. We anchor it in Scripture, and we go through not just about fathers, but wives, what it looks like to be a humble wife. Yeah. Follow Jesus in the home. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Jay, thank you for that. That was encouraging. Our only question of the night. Yeah, so I feel pretty good about what we've done.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we're missing that needs to be said about the book?
You can get it at hymnpublications.com/revolutionary or therevolutionarydisciple.com. You go to Amazon, Audible, Kindle. Those are the places. They all pretty much go to the same place, though. Amazon or my website, hymnpublications.com. Yeah, really excited about the book. Official launch is tomorrow. We're doing kind of a practice run of Facebook Live tonight with friends. And then tomorrow night, Jim Putman will go live to do the book signing. So I thought about doing a book signing, realized no one wants me to sign a book, I don't think. Oh, what's your favorite Daniel McCoy. I'm going to answer your question. What's your favorite paragraph in the book? That's actually, oh man. I was thinking about paragraph. Daniel. Come on, man. You think I memorized this thing? But yeah, Jim will be doing a live event tomorrow night on Facebook and YouTube for sure. So make sure and go over and follow Jim Putman. and to catch that. He's probably going to have better things to say. I actually think he will have better things to say. And so his name's bigger than mine on the cover, which was a sign of humility on my part, I think. I'm just kidding. No, he's got such a great life story. Sentence. That's even harder. Okay, Daniel McCoy said, what's your favorite sentence in the book? Actually, that is a little easier. We'll play book roulette. So, during college, I had embraced Jesus, but I wanted nothing to do with the church. I think it was Jim. That's not my favorite sentence. Let me see if I can find. Oh, that's a revolutionary disciples tremble at God's word. That one's cool. I think. I would say we tried to really hone in our definition of a humble disciple, and I'll repeat it again because this would be my favorite sentence of the whole book, because I think that this truly could be revolutionary for you in your life if you will take it to heart and let God work it out in your life. So we in the first section of the book, we kind of go piece by piece through this definition, but it's essentially this. A humble disciple knows who they are before God and chooses to go lower by serving, submitting, listening, and confessing. And so it's this fourfold kind of profile of a revolutionary. And it has changed my life to think like that. In other words, it starts in the heart, and then it works itself out through our actions and our words. And so we are a totally humble person. In Ephesians chapter 4, Paul says, be completely, I think it's verse 2, be completely humble. And it goes back to something I was saying earlier in this interview with my lovely wife, Rachel, that when God asks us to do something that seems challenging, he asks us to do it because it's possible. I think it would be absolutely crazy to believe in a God who has asked us to do something that we can't do. And so when Paul is inspired by the Holy Spirit of God to write, be completely humble, I don't think he means be flawless, but I think he means be holistically humble in every area of life. And so we take that and we say, what does that look like in the 5 spheres of life? Abiding in Christ, in the church, at home, in the world, and in the spiritual realm. How can we actually become totally humble? And if it's not possible to do that, then God's cruel and unusual, and I don't want to follow him. So I believe in the hope of Jesus through the power of the Spirit living in us as disciples of Jesus, that we can actually become generally, and in a sense, completely humble. Not that we always do it perfectly, but that in general, we've covered the bases because God showed us how to do that in the person of Jesus and empowered us to do that for his glory. So that's my favorite sentence. It's really kind of the thesis of the book. Daniel, does that satisfy you? I hope so. Guys, this has been fun. Ladies, if you're out there, didn't hear from you, but that's all right. There's one lady here. Sorry that the frame rate per second is not optimal. We'll work on that for next time.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
This has been fun.
This is good. It was a little stretching for me. I feel vulnerable. We set up the banner back here.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Very cool. Oh, Daniel. Glad to have you guys. Would love you guys to grab a copy of the book. It's therevolutionarydisciple.com, or you can check out this link right here. Whip, beep, beep, beep. hymnpublications.com/revolutionary. If that sounds like a sales pitch, it's because it is. I spent 3 years on this, and I'd like it to pay off in your life. By the way, if you buy this book this week, which is the week of September 20th, 2021, you get a free ebook and audiobook if you buy the hardback. I should have said that at the beginning. Yeah, it's a special. So that's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
And
I didn't even know that.
That was the email this morning.
I didn't read
Also, the hardback is 28% off. So it's literally a pretty incredible deal.
Wow.
Go get your copies. Anyway, it is about to be 9 o'clock Central Time, and I think we should just call it a day when it turns exactly. Oh, it's 9. Up.